Clint Eastwood leans back in his chair, his famously squinted eyes sharp even at the age of 95. His voice rumbles low, like whiskey being poured neat, steady, and deliberate. The interviewer, who's been waiting for the moment, takes a breath before asking the question that will ignite a wildfire. Clint, you've been the tough guy, the outlaw, the cowboy, the cop. Off-screen, which actresses really tempted you? Clint lets the question hang in the air, silence filling the room like a slow burn. The pause stretches long enough to make everyone uneasy. Then, with a dry chuckle, he breaks the tension. Well, at this age, what the hell do I got to lose? His tone is both self-assured and mischievous, a hint of devil-may-care twinkling in his weathered eyes. I've made a lot of movies, worked with a lot of beautiful women, and the truth is, some of them damn near broke my self-control, Clint continues, his voice a low growl. Others I never got the chance with, but I thought about it plenty. He lets the words settle for a moment. Let's just say there were 7 women who could have made me forget every line I ever memorized. The room grows tense. Clint's reputation for being tough, silent, and stoic on screen has always been legendary. But here, in his own words, he's breaking down that facade, offering a glimpse into the untold stories behind the cameras. As he leans forward, eyes narrowing like a man about to deal a winning hand, he starts recounting the names that still had a pull over him, names that made even a seasoned legend like Clint Eastwood second-guess his control. Clint Eastwood's career spans more than 6 decades, shaping the very fabric of Hollywood. From his iconic role as the rugged man with no name in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, to the gritty cop Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry, Eastwood defined what it meant to be an American icon. His characters weren't just actors on screen. They were representations of the strength, resolve, and mystique of an entire genre. The cowboy, the cop, the everyman. Eastwood played them all with a brand of masculinity that was equal parts hard and vulnerable. Known for his deep, gravelly voice and weathered, craggy face, Eastwood became a symbol of strength. He was the kind of actor whose very presence on screen could stop a scene in its tracks. Clint was the tough guy, the outlaw who could take on 10 bad guys with nothing but his bare hands and a steely stare. But off-screen, Clint was a completely different man, a man who had spent years working with some of the most beautiful women in Hollywood. And though his persona was grounded in machismo, he never shied away from acknowledging the seductive power of the women he worked with. As a director, producer, and actor, Clint's legacy is more than just a string of iconic performances. His career has spanned genres and decades, from spaghetti westerns to political thrillers, from love stories to war epics. But it's the undeniable chemistry between him and his co-stars, especially the women, that has kept the public intrigued. This story isn't just about Clint Eastwood's rise to stardom. It's about the women who crossed paths with him, the women who tested his legendary self-control. Despite his tough exterior, Clint's relationships with these women were not always confined to professionalism. As the years went on, these encounters turned into something deeper, more complex. The chemistry was undeniable. Some actresses were simply work partners, while others stirred emotions that Clint could never ignore. The following sections will dive deeper into the stories behind the names of 7 actresses Clint Eastwood found impossible to resist. When Clint Eastwood talks about Meryl Streep, his voice softens, almost reverently. The Bridges of Madison County was a film that not only defined Clint as a director but also brought him into a complex, intimate partnership with Streep, a woman whose talent and beauty could make anyone pause. Clint chuckles as he recalls their time on set. "Meryl," he starts, shaking his head with a grin. "That woman, she was dynamite. Trouble wrapped in elegance. They didn't just act together. The tension between them was palpable, off-screen as much as on-screen." Clint recalls that their on-screen chemistry wasn't just scripted. It was real, a moment so charged with unspoken words that it translated through the camera. During one of the most intense scenes of the film, where Clint's character, Robert Kincaid, and Meryl's character, Francesca, share a tender and intimate moment, Clint almost lost his composure. There's a scene where I lift her chin in that kitchen, Clint recalls. People always ask me if that was acting. Let me tell you straight, it wasn't. I was trying not to kiss her right there in front of 100 crew members. And if we hadn't been surrounded by lights and cameras, if it had just been me and her in that farmhouse kitchen, hell, I don't think we'd have finished the day's shoot. The slow-burning tension between the two was more than just the result of a script. Meryl had a way of looking at him, with those eyes, soft yet cutting, alluring yet demanding. Clint couldn't help but get lost in them, forgetting his lines, forgetting everything but the magnetic force that Meryl effortlessly projected. She had this scent too, Clint adds, his voice dropping lower. Something warm and faint, not perfume exactly, but just her. I remember standing close enough to catch it and thinking, if I breathe too deep, I'll end up writing my own obituary. He chuckles, but his tone reflects a deeper appreciation, a man recalling not just a co-star, but a once-in-a-lifetime connection. Clint sums it up simply. Meryl wasn't just a co-star, she was a storm. A woman who could make him forget his lines, forget his role, and almost lose himself in the passion of the moment. He admits, she damn near lived in me too for those few months. Sandra Locke was more than just a co-star. She was Clint Eastwood's partner both professionally and personally, appearing in 6 films with him, starting with the outlaw Josie Wales in 1976. Their off-screen relationship mirrored the fiery chemistry they shared on film, a tempest of attraction, tension, and mutual respect. Clint recalls Sandra with a tight smile, his eyes narrowing in reflection. Sandra Locke, he begins, the name carrying weight. Now that's a name that'll stir the dust. He shifts in his chair, his expression becoming serious, the memories rising to the surface. We worked together on 6 pictures. 6. That kind of thing doesn't happen unless there's fire burning both on and off the screen. Sandra's ability to switch from vulnerable to tough at the drop of a hat is what made her such an intriguing presence. Clint remembers how they could be laughing one minute, and the next, Sandra would cut him down with a look so sharp it could pierce steel. On screen, she was an equal to Clint's rough-edged characters. Off-screen, the chemistry was just as intense, sometimes leading to moments where the acting was so real it was hard to tell where the character ended and Clint and Sandra began. It was sparring, Clint says, a small grin pulling at the corners of his mouth. Half the time we were in character, half the time we weren't, and damned if I could always tell the difference. There was a fire between them, a connection that was undeniable. The electricity that sparked between them on set didn't just make for good film, it made for memorable moments that Clint would never forget. Clint laughs low, shaking his head as he remembers their time together. The chemistry was that thick, he admits. Half the time we were fighting like hell, and then the other half, we couldn't keep our hands off each other. You know, some of the best scenes we shot weren't even in the script. They were just us, getting lost in the moment. The passion they shared wasn't just about physical attraction. It was raw, it was real, and it was messy. Clint confesses that he sometimes didn't know whether he was acting or living out the very emotions they were supposed to portray. I behaved, sure, I tried to. But with Sandra, it was never that simple, he says with a grin. She was temptation, torment, and everything in between. Shirley MacLaine was a different kind of temptation. In 2 Mules for Sister Sarah, Clint Eastwood and Shirley created a dynamic that was full of humor, wit, and undeniable attraction. Clint remembers working with Shirley fondly, recalling how she could turn from businesslike to playful in an instant. She had a way of keeping him on his toes, balancing between the serious and the light-hearted with a laugh that could fill a room. Clint fondly remembers Shirley's sharp wit and her unpredictability. She wasn't just beautiful, he recalls. She was unpredictable. You never knew if she was going to kiss you, slap you, or tell you about a past life she'd had in Egypt. And truth be told, any one of those sounded pretty damn good to me. What made Shirley such a magnetic presence on and off screen was how she kept Clint guessing. One minute, she was serious and businesslike. The next, she would crack a joke so sharp it would cut through the tension. She kept you on your heels, Clint says, smiling to himself. That's attractive as hell to a guy like me. A woman who doesn't just play the game but rewrites the rules while you're standing there trying to catch up. Shirley MacLaine didn't just act, she lived every moment. Her presence was electric, and Clint couldn't help but be drawn to her energy. She was trouble, he says with a sly grin, but the kind you'd sign up for twice. Jessica Walter left a lasting impression on Clint Eastwood, particularly after their work together in Play Misty for Me. Clint's first time directing was a pivotal moment in his career, and Jessica brought an intensity to the role of Evelyn that he hadn't expected. Jessica wasn't just acting, she was captivating, almost hypnotic in her ability to embody obsession. Clint recalls Jessica's portrayal of Evelyn as hauntingly real. On screen, she played obsession better than anyone I've ever seen, Clint admits, his voice lowering. That look in her eyes, it wasn't acting. Not all of it. She had this way of staring straight through you, like she was peeling back the skin to see what you were hiding underneath. It wasn't just her performance that affected Clint, it was her presence, both on and off set. Off-screen, she had a spark too. Sharp, witty, the kind of woman who could cut you down with a line and then make you want to buy her a drink right after, Clint recalls with a dark chuckle. It was confusing as hell in the best way. Clint remembers moments where he couldn't tell where Evelyn ended and Jessica began. The lines were blurred. She would flash that smile, sweet, dangerous, and I'd think, Lord, if she leans in any closer, I'm not walking out of this scene clean. Donna Mills was a different kind of temptation for Clint Eastwood. In Play Misty for Me, she wasn't just the stereotypical blonde beauty. She brought depth and subtlety to her role. Clint was drawn to Donna's quiet allure, the kind of beauty that didn't shout for attention but commanded it nonetheless. Donna Mills, Clint recalls with a smile, she had that California glow. In Play Misty for Me, she didn't need to raise her voice or chew the scenery. She just had to walk into frame and every head turned, mine included. Clint was captivated by Donna's presence, which was as much about what she didn't say as what she did. Donna's ability to balance innocence with strength was something Clint admired deeply. She carried innocence on the surface, Clint says, but you could tell there was steel underneath. The kind of woman who didn't need to chase attention because it followed her everywhere she went. Clint admits that Donna had a way of making him feel seen, even when he wasn't trying to be. You'd look at Donna and think, that's the kind of beauty that undoes you without even trying. That understated charm and quiet confidence was what made her so magnetic to Clint. When Clint Eastwood speaks about Sophia Loren, his voice takes on a tone of admiration and reverence. It's clear that her presence left a lasting mark on him. Though they never worked together on screen, Clint recalls meeting her at Hollywood events and instantly being struck by her beauty and confidence. Sophia Loren, Clint says, a glint in his eyes. That woman wasn't just an actress. She was a force of nature. Clint's admiration for Loren goes beyond her stunning looks. It's her commanding presence, her way of walking into a room and taking it over that Clint can't shake. You'd be surrounded by 100 people in tuxedos and gowns, but once she stepped in, the whole place disappeared. All you saw was Sophia. He recalls how everyone, men and women alike, seemed to gravitate toward her. There was a magnetic quality to Loren that Clint couldn't deny. She had this way of making you feel like the only person in the room, even when there were dozens of people there. It was a kind of magic. Clint also remembers how, despite her glamour and fame, Sophia had an air of humility about her. She didn't flaunt her beauty. It was just there, naturally, effortlessly, Clint recalls. Sophia carried herself like she knew exactly the effect she had. And let me tell you, she wasn't wrong. There's something dangerous about that kind of awareness, something that pulls you in. Clint admits that if he had ever shared a scene with Sophia Loren, he might not have been able to maintain his composure. If she had ever looked at me the way she looked at others, Clint chuckles, I probably would have lost it. It wasn't just her beauty, though. It was the confidence, the knowledge that she owned the room without trying. For Clint, Sophia Loren represents the kind of woman who didn't need to chase attention. It was already hers, and she wielded it effortlessly. She wasn't just a co-star. She was the kind of woman who made you forget who you were, if only for a moment. Raquel Welch is the kind of woman who epitomizes timeless beauty and allure. Clint Eastwood's memories of working with her are filled with both admiration and a touch of awe. Raquel Welch, Clint says with a knowing smile. She was pure fire. From the moment she entered a room, she commanded attention, and Clint recalls that nobody could escape her magnetic presence. Clint remembers the first time he saw Raquel at a Hollywood event, before they ever worked together on screen. She didn't just enter a room, she claimed it, Clint says. Every man in the room straightened up, and every woman adjusted her dress because they knew what was coming. Raquel didn't just walk in, she owned the space. Her beauty was undeniable, but what struck Clint most was how Raquel seemed to effortlessly capture the attention of everyone around her. She had that confidence, that spark, Clint recalls. The kind of beauty that undoes you without even trying. She didn't need to make an effort. It was simply there. Clint admits that he found himself fascinated by Raquel, not just for her stunning looks, but for the way she carried herself. It wasn't just about her appearance, he says. Raquel had this presence, this energy that surrounded her. When she spoke, people listened. When she moved, people watched. Clint goes on to explain how Raquel had an effortless charm, one that made it difficult to keep his professional distance. She had this smirk, half invitation, half warning, Clint laughs. And a man like me, I'd have taken it as both. Hell, if she'd ever leaned in, cowboy hat or no cowboy hat, I probably wouldn't have walked out of the scene clean. For Clint, Raquel Welch represents the kind of temptation that is impossible to resist. You don't work with a woman like Raquel Welch and walk away untouched, Clint says. She wasn't just a co-star. She was a force of nature. And if I had the chance to go back, I'd probably walk right into it again. Jessica Walter's role in Play Misty for Me left an indelible mark on Clint Eastwood, especially since it was his first time directing a film. Her portrayal of Evelyn, a woman who spirals into obsession, wasn't just acting. It was a chilling performance that had Clint captivated both on-screen and off. Clint's voice drops lower as he remembers their time working together. Jessica Walter, Clint says, his tone somber. That was a hell of a woman to work with. On screen, she played obsession better than anyone I've ever seen. Clint recalls how Jessica's eyes could pierce right through you, stripping away any semblance of composure. She had this way of staring straight through you, like she was peeling back the skin to see what you were hiding underneath. Off-screen, Jessica wasn't just the intense character she portrayed. She had a sharp wit and an infectious charm. She was sharp, witty, and always knew how to make people laugh, even when the scene was heavy, Clint recalls. But that intensity she carried with her on set? That was real. Jessica was all in, and it made everything feel a little too real, a little too dangerous. The chemistry between them wasn't just about acting. It was about the raw energy between them that sometimes blurred the lines between reality and performance. There were moments I couldn't tell where Evelyn, her character, ended and Jessica began, Clint admits. It was confusing, in the best possible way. Working with Jessica Walter was an experience that Clint would never forget. She could make you furious one minute, and then make you forget your own damn name the next. And that kind of power? It's hard to resist, Clint says, reflecting on their dynamic. Jessica Walter wasn't just a co-star. She was a woman who made Clint feel more than just the director. She challenged him, intrigued him, and, ultimately, left him with a lasting impression that he still carries with him to this day. Donna Mills' presence on screen was magnetic, and Clint Eastwood was no exception when it came to being drawn to her charm. They worked together on Play Misty for Me, and Clint recalls Donna's ability to stand out in a crowded room without even trying. Donna Mills, Clint says, his tone softening slightly, was a different kind of temptation. Unlike some of the actresses Clint had worked with, Donna carried an air of simplicity that contrasted with her undeniable allure. She didn't need to do much, Clint remembers. In Play Misty for me, she didn't need to raise her voice or chew the scenery. She just walked into the frame and every head turned, mine included. Donna's beauty was understated yet potent, and Clint recalls how, even in a room full of people, she would effortlessly command attention. She had that California glow, Clint muses. That beauty that wasn't in your face but got under your skin anyway. It was the kind of beauty that made you feel like you were in the presence of something rare. What set Donna apart for Clint was her ability to balance grace with strength. She had innocence on the surface, but underneath, there was steel, he says. She didn't chase attention, because it followed her everywhere, and when she looked at you, it felt like you were the only one in the room. Clint also remembers the quiet moments he shared with Donna, when she didn't need to say anything at all to make him feel her presence. You'd look at Donna and think, that's the kind of beauty that undoes you without even trying, Clint says. Her presence was enough to make you forget everything else. For Clint, Donna Mills wasn't just another co-star. She was a woman who had a quiet power, a beauty that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling. And when she looked at me, with that soft smile of hers, Clint admits, I couldn't help but feel like she could make me forget myself entirely. And if I'd had the chance, I probably would have. As Clint Eastwood reflects on his long career, one thing becomes clear. The women he worked with weren't just co-stars, they were forces of nature who tested his self-control. In a career built on tough roles and stoic characters, Clint's relationships with these women were far more complex. He wasn't just the tough guy on screen. He was a man who had to resist temptation, sometimes at great personal cost. Each of these women left their mark on Clint, whether through their beauty, their charm, or their sheer presence. Working with them wasn't just about acting, it was about the connection that sparked between them, the chemistry that couldn't be faked, no matter how hard they tried. These actresses didn't just challenge Clint as an actor, they challenged him as a man, testing his restraint and forcing him to confront desires he had spent his career keeping hidden. In the end, Clint Eastwood was more than just the characters he played. He was a man who had spent decades working with some of the most powerful and magnetic women in Hollywood, each of them leaving an indelible impression on him. And while Clint may have played the tough guy, the real test of his grit was in how he interacted with these women, how he managed to keep his composure even when they made it nearly impossible to do so. These 7 actresses, each with their unique allure and power, were more than just names in Clint Eastwood's career. They were the women who made him forget the lines, the roles, and sometimes even his own self-control. And in Clint's world of tough guys, bad guys, and legendary roles, these women remain the true tests of his greatest strength.